Tomorrow sees the release of a brilliant new documentary called Kaiser, the greatest footballer to never play footballer. Tom Markham is the producer of it and he's with us. Good morning to you, Tom. How you doing?
Morning, Ger.
How the hell did you find this story, Tom?
Well, that's a good question. A good friend of mine, Rob Fulham, who's an oil broker over here in London, another Dublin lads, he came to me with this story in 2013, and there was a quiet day in the oil markets. And effectively, he found it on a Reddit forum, and it had been translated, 3 paragraphs that had been translated from Portuguese. And I looked at it and just thought, there's no way this story can be true. It just looks so embellished and so crazy. But it actually popped up again. We went to the World Cup in 2014. We were out with a lot of Brazilians that worked in the football industry, and 2 nights in the bounce, both groups independently said to us, like, this is the best story that's never been covered. So we decided to take a punt and make a film on it. So
you're making a documentary about a Brazilian footballer who wasn't really a footballer. Not an easy thing to do.
No. So the thing is, he is a conman, but he's sort of a lovable rogue. They have this term in Rio specifically, but in wider Brazil, called a malandro. And a malandro is effectively a chancer, but a chancer that people have a lot of respect for. There's almost more respect because of the culture over there for someone who makes it when they haven't worked that hard versus someone who actually makes it when they do work hard.
So you're in Brazil and you've read these 3 paragraphs on Reddit, and you get to Brazil and people are telling you that this is a real thing, that this guy is a real character. But how do you actually go about finding somebody and convincing them to be involved in a story that maybe when the documentary gets made doesn't paint them in a great light?
Well, how we found him is an interesting one as well, because 2 friends of mine that I was in university with have an agency in Brazil, so they said they could get to this guy. So we asked all the obvious questions, whether he was still alive, you know, whether he'd sold the story, whether anything had been done on him in the past. And we actually verified all this with Tim Vickery. So he was very important to the story initially. And we met Tim here in London. He happened to be in London at the time, and this was 2015. And the director of the film, Louis, turned around to Tim, and they both worked together at the BBC. And he just said to him, you know, tell us what you know about Carlos Enrique Raposo, aka Kaiser. And Tim turned around and he said, I've lived in Rio for 18 years. Not only is this the best football story I've ever come across, it's actually the best story. So that's when we decided to move on this. We put together a small crew, and probably 6 weeks later we were en route to Rio. Louis, the director, and 2 DOPs, Steve and Will, and we were trying to obviously track down this conman to tell the story. So it could have gone very badly. It could have been the most expensive holiday I'd ever had, but luckily it turned out pretty well. And 7 trips later to Brazil, we actually did 72 interviews. And the beauty of this story is, you know, on the surface of it, it sounds great. It's all of our dreams to make it as a professional footballer, and this guy did it in the hardest place to make it, in a golden era when you know, all of the best Brazilian footballers were still playing at home at that stage. But to put it in perspective, he became friends with 2 generations of the best players. So anyone from Carlos Alberto Torres, captain of the 1970 World Cup winning team, right through to the players from the 94 team, people like Bebeto, Romario, Ricardo Rocha. These were his best friends.
That is the kind of Forrest Gump element of all this, that he has a front row seat for Brazilian football history during that great resurgence of Brazilian football. So maybe just tell people a little bit about this story without obviously giving away too much. We're going to show the trailer at the end of this, so whatever's in the trailer is fair game.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing is, the story, it's actually so deep, Ger, but on the surface, this guy managed to blag a 26-year professional football career at the best teams in Brazil. So we're talking Flamengo, Botafogo, Vasco da Gama, Independiente in Argentina, who beat Barcelona in the World Club Championship that year, Puebla in Mexico, Ajaccio in France. And so that's it on the surface. But he also managed to swindle some of the mafia bosses that owned some of these big clubs in Brazil. And the story was so deep that probably on the second trip, we realized it was either going to be an O.J. Simpson style doc and go on for 10, 12 hours, or else we were going to write a book. So we actually got Rob Smythe from The Guardian, who's written the book as well, which is coming out tomorrow, because when people see the film, there's more questions than answers.
That's one thing that certainly stuck out to me, and it's great. And I don't want to give away anything at the end there, but obviously there is a bit of a twist, certainly, with the way the audience views Kaiser near the end. And it certainly seems to me it's important to point out the multiple different interviews. And I do wonder how long it took for you guys to actually break down Kaiser, to actually peel away at a couple of layers to the point where we have this human at the end. And again, I'm not going to give away what happens, but we have a very different character and a very different relationship with Kaiser at the end. How long did that take?
It took nearly 2 years to do that. So when we met him, he's a very, very charismatic guy. He's obviously someone who can manipulate situations to get what he wants. So initially, he thought it was the world according to Kaiser. And the beauty of this story is probably 50-60% of it's true. No one really knows the exact number, but you don't know which half is true. So, and you've got people that are contradicting each other the whole way through the story. So it's almost up to you to make up your own mind. And we've had the full perspective on that. People who believe nothing, people who believe everything, and that creates a lot of debate.
It's interesting as well when you think about it, and like at the start, particularly when you explore the sort of misogynistic elements to Kaiser's character, there is an element of dislikability about him, but the more you think about it, the more the telling of the Kaiser story is the perfect telling of the Rio story and the representation that he provides of that era and how much of a product of that environment Kaiser is.
Yeah, and I think that was something that was very important to us, to almost tell the story as we found it. We didn't want to manipulate it in any way. We wanted to just show that. And that was a little bit of an issue because obviously the film industry in particular was going through such a bad period with the Harvey Weinstein scandal and everything else. So to be able to touch on this, and obviously Rio in the 80s was quite a sex-charged place. Kaiser and footballers, they had that type of lifestyle. So obviously it was difficult to actually tell that story the way we found it and the way that really happened, but not offend people that obviously, have been involved in the industry and it's slightly different circumstances because everything was consensual that happened. It might have been based on a lie, whereas the Weinstein situation was completely different to that.
Tom, to spool it back a little bit, how did he actually manage to get his first job? Like, was he an average footballer at some point? Did he show any athletic prowess? Was he banging in goals as a kid? Where does the con begin?
Yeah, so the con, he's from Botafogo and he ended up in the Botafogo Academy as a kid. He was always very athletic, very fit. And that's what paid off in later life. So he became this sort of almost mythical character in Rio. Carlos Alberto Torres said in an interview that Kaiser in the 1980s had more influence on Rio society than he did. So that's the sort of level that we're talking about. And that was verified by his son, who played, for a variety of teams, Alexander Torres, but including under Arsene Wenger in Japan. And to hear that is just crazy, given the magnitude of the character that Carlos Alberto is. But Kaiser, he's just in later life. I think a lot of the players were in on his whole let's just say con. So, for example, Bebeto takes him to Flamengo, and Carlos Alberto is the manager at the time. So you're going to the biggest club in South America. And the fact that you can even just rock up for pre-season is a little bit mind-boggling. But you have to remember that era, these guys were all playing football with their mates down on the beach. So even though it's just a completely different era and the skill set was still there, but Kaiser was much fitter than most of these players. He's now a fitness trainer that only trains women. So you cannot write this story. We brought this into to Sony. And the girl that we were speaking to there just said if someone brought this as a script, they'd just get laughed straight off the stage, that it is stranger than fiction.
So where can people actually see it, Tom? What's the distribution mechanism?
Yeah, good question, Jared. So from an Irish perspective, we've actually been a little bit hamstrung in that we've got Mission Impossible 49 or whatever number it is coming out this week, and we've got Mamma Mia. The cinema industry seem to want to take the safe bets, but luckily enough, we got into Tribeca with this film. It was higher rated in The Guardian than Icarus that won the Oscar last year, so we're really happy with the way everything has developed. But at the moment, there's only 2 screens in View Liffey Valley this Sunday where you can see it, but we're hoping to get more Irish dates. Our distributor is on that case at the moment. It will be released digitally, probably in the next, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks as well. So people will be able to see it that way. But yeah, that element, we've been a little bit disappointed. We've managed to get quite a lot of screens in the UK, but I'd like for people to be able to see it at home as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's absolutely brilliant. And it did strike me, Tom, that this is a massive shift in career for you. We've obviously had you on the show before talking about the various aspects of your professional sports life, which is involved in football administration and also, of course, with Championship Manager, Football Manager, and as some people might know it, the decision to suddenly become a film producer is like a massive quantum leap, but you're kind of doing it as a nice little hobby and sideline, and suddenly you've made this world-class documentary.
Well, thanks, Jer. But it was almost too good an opportunity to turn down. So that's why effectively all of my holidays for the last 2.5, 3 years I've spent, fair enough, I've gone to Brazil, but we've actually had to work quite hard down there to get this done with a very small team. We're delighted with the way it's turned out. Obviously, the book we're really, really happy with as well. Rob's done an amazing job on that. And we've actually had a few offers to do some dramatisation of the story as well. So we've had 2 offers for a series and 2 offers for a Hollywood-style movie as well. So but we just want to get the doc going first and to make sure that people get to see this incredible story.
You've got some props for us.
I do, actually, yeah. So this is one of Kaiser's Bangu shirts from back in the day. So Bangu is actually where, and this is a newer one that he signed. He loves to give people signed shirts. But Bangu was actually the scene of the first ever football match in Brazil, and it was a Scottish missionary who actually brought football to Brazil. But Kaiser played there in the mid-'80s, and it was owned by a mafia boss called Castor de Andrade at the time, who was the biggest sort of crime boss in Brazil. And they did a Leicester City in 1985. They got to the final of the Brazilian League. It was a round robin competition at that stage, and they lost on a penalty shootout. But he had obviously washed a lot of his money through this club, and they had some of the best players in Brazil at the time, and Kaiser was there sitting on the bench.
Is Kaiser rich at the end of this?
No, and the thing is, Kaiser has never really had money, or the way he got through all of this. He's lived this high society lifestyle, rubbing shoulders with politicians, actors, mafia bosses, footballers, and he's done it in a very clever way. Because he had such a good relationship and was loved by so many of these people, he would take, say, Zico, for example, and Zico and his wife would go to a restaurant. Kaiser would obviously know the guy who runs the restaurant, bring along, his girlfriend at the time, and because he's brought Zico to the restaurant, he doesn't have to pay for anything because it's obviously free advertising. And this is the way he lived his life. So he would almost arrange these different things and get something out of it for himself. And he even did that with the media. So he had relationships with all the journalists in Brazil, and because he knew all the players so well, it was easier to get an interview with a Romario or an Edmundo, for example, through Kaiser than it was to get it through the press, management at the club. So he would arrange that with the player at a time that suited them, and then the journalists would owe him favours, so they'd be writing articles about him when required. He ended up as a pundit on the Brazilian equivalent of Match of the Day, which you'll see in the film as well. And there was another clip that doesn't feature in the film, but he was very good friends with Edmundo, as I mentioned. And there was a goal of the month competition that was decided in the studio. And Kaiser had the casting vote and obviously gave it to Edmundo, and Edmundo won a car on the back of all of this, and obviously he was a good mate of his.
It's handy how things always work out for the conman. Tom, congratulations on the movie. It's brilliant. Well done. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks a mil, guys. Cheers.
Dr. Tom Markham there. You can follow him on Twitter at @TMFootyFinance. And as he said, it's in Liffey Valley. We'll show you the trailer now. Have a look.
Eu entrei nesse documentário para ser sincero.
O Júnior manda direto.
O futebol brasileiro é aquele futebol áfrico. Tecnicamente é fantástico.
Pelé dominou, Carlos Alberto está livre, correu, caminho, atirou, gol!
Nós temos aí grandes exemplos, né, de jogadores excepcionais. Diariamente, vamos dizer assim, apareceu uma pessoa como o Kaiser.
O Kaiser é uma das figuras mais emblemáticas do futebol mundial. Ele era único só. A bola.
Acho que é o único cidadão do planeta que, durante 26 anos, jogou futebol sem colocar uma chuteira no pé.
Essa história de um não jogador de futebol, não joguei, não fiz um gol, não dei um chute.
Ele deu 2 piques e sentiu aí. Botou a mão na perna, pediu para sair.
Há festas, como o primeiro-ministro italiano lá, com muitas orgias.
O Carlos Kaiser é jogador de futebol.
Aí tô vendo na televisão, o Kaiser tá nova contratação depois.
Ah, não acredito que ele tá em outro clube lá.
Tu vê a pessoa dar uma volta no mais perigoso do Brasil.
O divertimento é sexo, é uma doença, como Michael Douglas dizem que tem.
Ele foi o maior jogador de futebol, nunca teve jogado futebol. Imbatível.